welcome to our Talent Solutions Team webinar. Our Talent Solutions team is comprised of Ag Careers, DeLacy Executive, and Food Grads. And we are your career specialists in agriculture and food, here to feed your future, and we're excited to share some insights with you today. So thank you for joining us for today's webinar. It is Let's Talk Money, what you need to know about salary. My name is Bonnie Johnson. I'm Marketing and Communications Manager with Ag Careers. I'm glad to have joining me today Mary Barefoot. And Mary is the Manager of Research and Insights with Ag Careers. She's been with us for 20 years. Her passion lies within data analytics and helping ag and food clients with advance through the industry with HR insights and market research. Mary's career has focused on leading the company's exclusive online ag and salary survey, the Compensation Benchmark Review, in both the US and Canada. And Mary also serves as Manager of Human Resources for the Talent Solutions team, which encompasses Ag Careers, DeLacy, and Food Grads. And then we have Nicole Glacci. Nicole is a Talent Solutions Manager with a focus on food and beverage processing industry. She has over 15 years of experience in recruiting. Nicole has honed her expertise in identifying and nurturing talent within the sector. After a decade of third-party recruiting, she noticed a significant gap in support for students and graduates starting their careers and a need to attract more individuals to the industry. So in response, Nicole founded Food Grads, which has since become an integral part of the Talent Solutions team. She continues to expand Food Grads, fostering relationships with colleges and universities to support students and graduates. And additionally, Nicole has returned her roots by partnering with organizations as a DeLacy recruiter, helping them meet their hiring needs. So let's go over a little bit about what we're going to learn today. We're going to talk about the importance of knowing your worth when we're talking salary, defining your value, how to time that conversation, negotiation consideration, should you negotiate, and how to do that, and then thinking beyond the paycheck to total compensation as well. Our really goal for you today is to build confidence and clarity around salary expectations. So to start us off, knowing your worth. So we're going to start by encouraging you to do a little bit of homework before you begin that job search process so you can know your worth. Understand the market rates for your role. You can use job boards like agcareers.com. You can also look at salary guides like salary.com, PayScale, even professional associations for your sector. If it's an R&D sector or food sector or agronomy, there are professional associations that might have some salary guides for you as well. Then it's important to understand your location, your industry, the company size you're dealing with, and how your experience impacts pay. For example, a salary in the city of Toronto is likely going to be vastly different from a salary in rural Kentucky. It will also depend on the employer size, both their number of employees and their sales and profits, and then your experience. So knowing what's realistic for an entry-level position versus experienced roles. And then we encourage you, considering to know your worth, is to look at your finances and determine a safe number for you. So what do you need to cover your expenses, your wants, and your needs? Look at past offers, your current capacity, and use your resources and your network to estimate your worth. So do a little bit of that pre-prep work to know your worth. And now I'm going to pass it over to Nicole to talk salary.
Thanks, Bonnie. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to chat with you today. I'm excited to kind of share my insights from being a recruiter for the last 15 years. I think that I can share not only some insights in terms of and advice in terms of when to talk salary, that kind of thing, but also how to work with a recruiter, because I think probably everybody at some point in their life will work through a recruiter through their job search. So it's nice just to understand how you do it alone, as well as how, you know, you might work with a recruiter in this situation. So, you know, when to talk salary, timing is everything. It is the most important thing in most people's mind, but it is important not to lead with this out of the gate. You know, if as you're approaching the job search, you know, it definitely is a very important aspect of your job search. We work to make money. It is important. So hopefully today we can kind of explain a little bit more about some of the details, so you feel confident when to bring it up, when not to, and certainly from a recruiter perspective, when you've you know, had the chance to work with the recruiter, and they'll do some of this for you. So if we can go to the next slide. So what's on the job posting? So I think when you first start your job search, it's important to know the job, know the salary, and so where will you find that? So, you know, this slide shows where it might be on the job posting. It could be in the job title, it could be in the summary, it can be in the compensation or perks section, or in the fine print within the body of the job posting. So you might have to dig deep. If salary isn't posted, you are able to maybe reach out and ask respectfully, you know, can you share the salary range? If you are not selected for an interview, there's a good chance you're not going to hear back. You know, you might, but you might not. So I think going in with that sort of expectation. But I will also say that if you are working through a recruiter and you're interested in a job, or the recruiter's reached out to you about the position, then it's important to share your salary expectations, and you know what you bring to the table, and all of that will be done throughout the process with the recruiter. So I'll talk a little bit more in the next few slides about that. But there's different ways that you could start the job search and start this process. Obviously, the first is the job posting, and a growing number of states and cities have made it mandatory to show the salary. It's not across the board everywhere. So examples in the US, I don't know this all off by heart. So I'm reading a little bit, but California, New York State, Colorado, Washington, they require salary ranges to be in ads. New York City, it depends on the size of the organization, but they do require it as of 2022. As of this year, Illinois expects it. So take a look. It depends which state you're in, whether you will see that there are jobs, there are salaries posted. It might just be it might be a range, or it might be a specific number. So again, this is really important to understand going in. You don't want to apply to a job that the range is much lower and your expectation is going to be much higher, because it's on the posting. I think to try and negotiate a huge amount is unrealistic. So I would definitely recommend that, you know, the based on what you understand with the posting, that your expectations are in line. I will add that some US jurisdictions have banned employers asking about your salary history, just to make sure that people aren't being discriminated on wage. You know, and that what that really means is you may be in a role where you aren't being paid the fair market value, and the next role that you're applying to, you know, the range might be higher. So, you know, if you provide a number that's lower, you might lowball yourself. And so there are some federally mandated rules now to protect you. So just be aware of some of those. And the same in Canada. You know, British Columbia, as of November 23, they provide the ranges and salary postings in the posting. In Ontario, since 2018, I believe there was talk of it, but it's not been enacted yet. So that's, I'm not sure why. But definitely, understand where you are and where it's mandatory to know these things. And if we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Bonnie. So as Bonnie mentioned, know your worth, determine a salary range that reflects your skills, experience, goals. So how do you do that? Know your strengths. So what do people rely on you for? What are you're in your role now. What do people always, what should they go to? Like, what do they always come to you for? So, what do you do best? What do you like? These are things that I would definitely, include in your skill set. Quantify your contributions, especially if you're in a sales role. If you can include things like, improved sales from 1 million to 100 million, and those hard numbers really bode well for you, and they do add your value and your ability, as well as, employees love numbers. They love to see the value you're going to bring to the organization. Make sure you're taking a look at the job description and you are aligning your value to the job, because that again will boost your value for the position, and therefore your negotiating props, that you can go in and really ask for what you believe you're worth. If you can truly show what you've done in the past, what you're doing currently, and how you're a great match. So also, just to sort of reiterate what Bonnie had said, know your worth in the market. So make sure you've done your research. So don't just say you're qualified. Make sure that you've proved why you're qualified. And then we can go to the next slide. So during the interview, you could get questions about your salary, questions about your current salary and what you're expecting, your salary expectations for this particular position. So we'll sort of go through a few of those scenarios. So one scenario is you did get the call, you applied to the position and you got the call, and now you're in the interview situation. Again, I would not lead with any conversation about salary unless the hiring manager, the person that's interviewing you, brings it up first. If they don't bring it up, while it is important, perhaps save it to the end of the interview, because you really have that time to prove your worth. Like, I would focus on that first, showing the value that you bring to the organization. If you approach the interview only really being concerned about the money, then it's a red flag as a recruiter, as an employer, that's all you really are concerned about. I think some of this is obvious, but just it's worth mentioning. And especially if you work through a recruiter, when you have gone through a third-party recruiter like myself, we would have had a conversation, and I would have asked, what is your salary expectation? And I would have presented that to the client, to the employer, and so they have a number in mind that you're open to. So if it came up in conversation, you could say, I'm open to the range that you have planned for this position, or I believe that Nicole, the recruiter, has shared my salary expectations. So those are ways that you can handle those kind of situations. But at the end of the day, refer to your own examples. In more interviews, you'll be asked about salary, so you can talk about where you've been, what you've done. I would just try and stay away from hard, firm numbers. Again, don't recommend you bring it up. You could mention that you've done your research and this is the range that you believe is appropriate for that position, but I'd keep it broad at that point. And ask smart questions. What does success look like in the first 90 days? Is this role a replacement? What led to the decision? There's a bunch of questions you can ask that don't include what does this pay, that shows your interest in the position, shows the value you can bring, without sort of diminishing your opportunity to negotiate a salary at the appropriate time. If we can go to the next slide. So after the interview, I would definitely send a thank you note, express your appreciation, your interest, reinforce the interest in the role. You know, hopefully you discussed a lot of, touched on a lot of responsibilities in the role, qualifications required. So reflect on some of these, and I would definitely mention them in the follow-up email. And you know, I would certainly take notes after the interview, so that you can reflect on those. And you know, was salary discussed? And if not, now's the time to prepare a response in case they do come forward with an offer. So be prepared for a potential offer. If you felt the interview went well, you know, you certainly want to be prepared. And again, do all the research that we've talked about. So review your target salary range and be ready to negotiate. Again, if you're working through a recruiter, I would, as the recruiter, if you were working with me, I'd come back to you after the interview and say, hey, how did it go? You know, tell me what your thoughts and feedback are, and are your salary expectations still aligned based on what was shared with you in the interview? I will say that if you have gone through a recruiter and they have sent over your salary expectations, the last thing we want to hear is you sort of come back and say, well, now that I've learned more about the role, I want to ask for twice as much. That will not help the process, because you know, we've presented you, as the recruiter, presented you at a certain number. So, you know, there is always a little bit of negotiation room, but if you jump too far away from what you said you were open to, then it doesn't bode well for you to move through in the process. And it also doesn't bode well for the recruiter, because that is the recruiter's job to make sure everyone's aligned prior to you going out to interview. So just wanted to sort of mention that. That's a really critical point. But you definitely need to have an idea of what's your bottom line based on your finances, like Bonnie mentioned. You know, is the location correct for you? If it's an on-site position, find out if it's a remote position or hybrid. Like, all these things will definitely tie into whether the opportunity is right for you, certainly from a financial perspective. So when you get the offer, you have the opportunity to negotiate, absolutely, respectively, especially when you bring facts and confidence, like you understand the market, you understand the employer. And that brings me on to my next slide, which is really do understand the employer and the market. Again, to reiterate what Barney said, do your homework on the employer, know the market rates. Glassdoor, Indeed, Talent.com, Salary.com, Job Bank Canada, and certainly FoodGrid salary guides, Ag Careers salary guides, all of the information that you will have at your fingertips. Use that to go in and negotiate, but always negotiate realistically. Understand your value. And this might be a good time to bring up, sometimes there isn't room for negotiation. If you're a new grad, sorry, I should say if you're a student and there's a set salary for that job, I think it sometimes is just the salary. And if you want that job, you need to accept that that's what you're going to be paid. As you gain more experience, you are definitely in a position to negotiate harder, and as we've discussed today, come to the negotiation table with facts and figures and research and everything in your toolbox to have that conversation. So you want to look at the role, the region, and the typical salary range for the experience level. I can't stress enough, you need to be realistic, because of course the person on the other side of the table is an expert, and hiring managers do this for a living, so they know where you kind of fit. So I can't stress enough that you need to be realistic, and understand what influences pay, like location, industry, demand for the role. You know, again, skilled trades, things like that, you might be able to negotiate a little bit higher, knowing that there aren't many people that you know, are qualified millwrights right now, and so you know that that position is really in demand, and so you could maybe hike the salary up a little bit. So all important stuff to bring to the table. And I think the most as well, I would say, when understand that you're not just guessing. You want to make sure the employer knows that you've done your research and you're coming at a place of confidence. And then if we can go to slide 11. So the negotiation piece, some of that, if you're going through a recruiter, will be my job or the recruiter's job. You know, you may come back and say, I like the role, I really like the employer, I think I'm a good fit, the culture is amazing, all my goals and my outlook in life, my passions, we're all aligned, this is a great opportunity for me, and I really want this job. And hopefully the range that you provided is the range they're aware of, and because I would have provided that to them in the overview. And you may have discussed it a little bit during the interview process or post-interview. But you know, at the end of the day, you never know what the employer is actually going to put in on paper. In my world, I try and have them provide a verbal offer first, to make sure we're aligned before they take the time to put everything in writing. And that's really where you can say, you know, I'm at the, based on everything I've learned, I would be at the higher end of the range I provided. You know, have that conversation so that, you know, the recruiter that's working on your behalf can go in and get you what you're looking for. If you're negotiating yourself one-on-one with the organization, I think the bottom line is this is expected. You know, don't think you're being awkward or oh gosh, will they give the job to somebody else if I negotiate? It's expected for the most part. So with that in mind, and again, you really have to listen to the conversation. If they said this is our best and final offer, you know, we don't want to go back and forth. If they've said that kind of verbiage, then, you know, again, you come back and you have a think. But if it's the first offer, I would say you're in a great position to say thank you, you know, make it clear that you're grateful for the opportunity and that you appreciate the offer, and you want a little bit of time to consider it. And then you can thoughtfully go back either via email. I think then you have the paper trail. So it's really handy if you want to make sure that afterwards you're not, did they say this or did I say that? You have it in writing, what you've asked for. And you know, I would say thank you for the offer based on the role, responsibilities, and market research. I was expecting something closer to, is there flexibility? You know, it's very respectful way to go back and ask for what you want. You know, express your excitement, ask if there's room for negotiation, all these types of this verbiage, I think is respectful and you won't blow it, you know, you're not going to lose the job, but you can certainly advocate for yourself and get what you want from the role. I think I can't stress enough to start on a great note with a new employer is the best. If you feel like you've been lowballed and you're worth more, will that disappear on day one when you start the job? Probably not. So you don't want to start with an employer in a place of resentment. So this is your time to make sure you have you know, advocated for yourself and that you feel, you know, the start date it works for you, the hours of work, you've talked about that. You know, is there training and is there training development, is there tuition support? These are things you can negotiate to, which I know Mary's going to talk a little bit more in depth about, but don't apologize or justify why you're asking for what you're asking for. Be confident, and as long as you've done your research and you feel you're coming at this from a place of confidence, negotiate, and good luck. And I'll pass it over to Mary now.
Thanks, Nicole. Great job. And that is great advice about salaries. Absolutely. As Nicole and Bonnie and myself discussed the salary negotiation process, we definitely agreed that it's a bit of an art. So everyone approaches it a little bit differently. There's not particularly a right or a wrong, but there may be some do's and don'ts. And I think Nicole captured a lot of those. We did not compare notes, but my absolute do is to be realistic. And so she said that multiple times. So I would just reiterate that piece of advice. I think that's the fastest way to turn employers off or to turn off their interest is, if you're talking about some type of astronomical salary that's not realistic for the role. But you also want to make sure that you are being very courteous to your prospective employer, and so that you can communicate effectively and keep that conversation open, I think is very important. The most successful negotiators that I have experienced through providing offers are those that are, like Nicole said, confident, but they can have that conversation. They have the ability to talk about the why. They can express, what they need and why they need that amount. But then they're also appreciative of the company's resources, and they, realize that they're not unlimited. So I think it's a balance of both. But if you're thoughtful about your approach, then you definitely can come to a compromise. And I think that the recruiter or the hiring manager on the other end intuitively can feel out, what your needs are and how genuine I think you're being about what you're asking for. So I think Nicole would probably agree that she kind of has a sixth sense, so to speak, of kind of where people are and, when they're being a bit fake and when they're being real, about their needs and genuine. So that's important. If you receive that offer, you definitely want to express your gratitude for being selected to receive that. But then you need to ask for that more time so that you can review all the details of the offer and what's included in that. And so the first step is going to be asking for a deadline of when you need to get back to that recruiter or that hiring manager in response to that offer that they've made. So that would be kind of step one. And then what I'm going to talk about is all the other things that are kind of included within a particular job offer. And so you may hear that referred to as total rewards. And so when an employer, is looking to hire you, you may be thinking just about that base salary number on the offer letter, but they're thinking about a much larger number that encompasses all of the cost and investment that they're making to hire you and to bring you on to their organization. And so that's called total reward. So that's a bigger picture of the compensation that you're receiving. And so total comp would be your base salary plus bonus, incentive, and commission. So it's typically that total amount that you can expect in your paycheck over a given year, over the course of a year. And those values are absolutely 100% important. However, there's a bigger number that looks at, all the encompassing benefits called total rewards. And so these things include benefits such as like health and dental and vision insurance, retirement, paid leave, what types of flexibility and perks. All of these things have a huge impact, not only on number one, your happiness, how happy you are with the position, but to what you're actually bringing home. So you may see one number on the offer letter, but a lot of these other details included in the offer are really going to impact the ultimate amount that you deposit into your bank account month to month. So let's talk a little bit more about those. Bonnie, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll talk about paid leave. And so we all enjoy flexibility. We all enjoy time off. So this is something that's typically included in the offer. It's going to cover potentially the holidays that are offered by the employer, vacation, sick, floating holidays, personal days. There may be a mix of those. They may be all combined and reflected in a PTO number. So you may see some of those type terms, or they may be separated out. In some countries, these benefits are not mandated by the government, and so you may see a lot of variation from company to company. They're not mandated in the United States. There's just a few states that provide guidelines around vacation time, for example. So there's not as much structure, and companies can put these packages together as they choose. So this is definitely one to pay attention to. You may want to ask a few additional questions about what this looks like within the offer that you receive. It's also potentially, and I say potentially, an area of negotiation. What I typically see is some organizations that have a lot of structure and policy in place. When you come into the organization, you're being captured as a year one employee, regardless if you have, 30 years of experience or 1 year of experience, and everyone starts on the same accrual process, if you will, whenever you are hired with the organization. Some companies have a much more flexible policy, and so they are able to negotiate time off with you and almost use it as a way of adding additional dollars, so to speak, to the offer by giving you additional paid time off. So just keep in mind that it's something that you could potentially negotiate with your new employer. Don't always expect them to roll out the red carpet and say, sure, we're going to give you an extra 2 weeks of vacation, because they may not be able to do that. And they truly, it may not be part of their culture to be flexible on this particular benefit. However, everyone enjoys, having time off. So how much time is being provided is really key. One thing that I've seen, I'm just going to caution you to look for, is I have seen where the holidays were actually included in the encompassing number of days provided off. So if you aren't seeing a holiday number versus a vacation, sick, personal day number, you may want to ask, because I have seen companies provide a total number, and then you actually have to use some of your paid time off for observing holidays, which would not be fun at all. So just small things like that. Just make sure you're reading kind of the fine print. And if you've got questions, make sure that you definitely ask questions. I think paid leave is one of those benefits where we definitely see that no one offer is right for each candidate, and that our values of what's important to us, varies from person to person. And so if I am taking a new job that has a real lush, paid leave benefit, and I'm going to have more time off to spend with my family, that may be worth, an extra $5,000 or $10,000 to me, than it is going to, be valued to me in the base salary that's being offered. So no one fit is right for everyone. I'll give the example. We were helping a company hire for a role, and they wanted someone really personable. And we had this great dental hygienist that had applied to the position, and she had a wonderful personality. But when it came down to it, even though she was going to be making a little bit more money as a dental hygienist, she was off on Fridays, and she was not willing to give up that Friday off to make more money. So, or, not a reasonable amount more of money that it would take, for her to give up that flexibility. So those are definitely examples of give and take for sure. On the next slide, we'll just talk a little bit about that benefits information. This is typically, it's not always supplied to you. So you may have to ask for this information in addition to the offer letter. You may have to say, hey, what is the benefits? What do they look like? What are these expenses going to be? And I cannot stress enough to you that this is quite easily maybe the most undervalued or underestimated, overlooked component of a offer letter, or of coming on to a new company. Typically, candidates are so excited to move forward once they get the offer, and it's within the range that they want to accept, that they maybe overlook these details. But certainly these can have really large impacts to your bottom dollar and what you're bringing home every month. So typically your health insurance, for example, is going to be a shared cost between your employer and yourself. These premium amounts are going to be coming out of your paycheck month after month. So depending on what their program looks like and what percentage they're covering compared to what percentage you, the employee, are meeting, can make a stark difference in how much money you make at the end of the month. So it's definitely important to maybe ask about their plans and what some of the cost coverages are. If you're young and you know that you're only going to be just the employee cost, it may not be big, but if you're a family, or you have it's a multiple children, then that's definitely going to impact and have more cost for you. Absolutely. So definitely ask some questions about that. As well as, retirement, for example. Company match with retirement is often called free money. You've probably heard that term. And so this has a direct impact on how you reach your financial goals, not only when you're older and getting closer to retirement, but when you're younger, because of something called compound interest. So this isn't a math lesson, but it's really important to start young. I think if I have one regret of my career, it would be to, start investing in my 401k sooner. So how much the employer is matching, it makes a huge difference in your overall financial wealth. as an employee long term. And then again, these aren't things people like to talk about, but short and long-term disability, like this isn't fun stuff, but there are policies that are really important, especially if you're US based, because there's not typically policies and programs to fall back on. So coverage is not always paid for by the company to have these types of benefits, but it's definitely important in the event that you were seriously injured and you would be out of work for an extended amount of time. So just something to think about, as well as, life insurance, AD&D. Again, not exciting perks, but things that companies offer that, definitely are, a comfort to a family if they were to lose a loved one. So pay attention to those things. Additionally, there's other benefits and perks that are listed, I think, on the next slide. Not all of these are standard benefits, so not all companies are going to be providing these. Some of these may be negotiable. They may be things that you can, hey, if you can't, meet my expectation on the base salary, is it possible that I could, get one of these benefits? Or it's possible that they provide like a reimbursement, for example, for like a cell phone. And so, I mean, if you think about how much your monthly cell phone bill is, if you get reimbursement for that, or, for internet or for a vehicle, you can quickly add up, the value that may be adding to your month to month expenses and the cost that, your family would otherwise incur. So think about things like, a gym membership, if that's something that you definitely, want to keep or have, if you were to not have that benefit anymore, or you're leaving an organization that provided that before, how much is that going to cost you per month? Maternity leave benefits. This is something that we're starting to see companies be more competitive with. So if you're looking to, start a family, or you have, you want to have children, that might definitely be something that I would be interested in learning more about at the organization. If you can do that subtly, through asking more about their benefits package. So several different areas of benefits and perks that could definitely be an advantage to you financially that may not necessarily translate to just a base salary number. And then on the next slide, there are some true things that are just intangibles. And so in some cases, taking a job ultimately carries like an intangible value that you really can't quantify or put a dollar amount on it, but it carries a lot of weight in your decision. And so examples of these would be maybe the opportunity that the job provides, if it's an opportunity to travel or to work on a project that's very important to you, to develop something from the ground up. I mean, I think we could all put different values on an opportunity like that. Also, I would just mention that, like company brands, it's not unheard of in the recruitment world for us to be asked to actually source employees that have worked for a certain company or brand, because those employees are known to be, top level talent or well-trained or advanced, within the industry. So if you get an opportunity to work with one of those types of organizations, it's possible that that's worth more to you than, what they're offering on the job offer. And then also, is this job going to provide you with new contacts, a new network, or is it a stepping stone, right, to that next career jump that you need to make on your way to, your career progressing as you would wish? So all of those things are kind of, you can't put a dollar amount on it, but they're important and they're definitely worth, thinking through as you're kind of evaluating that entire job offer. And then finally, salary and compensation isn't a one-time conversation. So absolutely, you're going to have this conversation. You're going to agree to the offer, you accept and you're employed, but there's going to be more opportunities to talk about how much money you're making at an organization, whether that be during a salary review process. At some organizations that coincides with the annual review process. If you didn't get that starting salary that you took the job, sometimes you have to prove yourself. You have to take the job and prove yourself first, but then you're going to have an opportunity with your, with your manager to talk through advocating, on your behalf of what you have accomplished and, how successful you've been in the role. Again, this is where, you want to be realistic and rational about your achievements and performance, but definitely you'll have the ability to ask some questions and raise that conversation so that you can ultimately get to the salary that you want. And I'm going to hand it back over to Bonnie to recap.
Okay, yes, thank you. Thank you both so much. So a quick recap to look at what we talked about today. Our goal for you was to help build your confidence and clarity around your salary expectations. And that starts by knowing your worth, defining what your value is, considering the timing of the conversation, and then do you want to negotiate and when to negotiate? And then finally, thinking beyond that paycheck to the total rewards and everything else that's included beyond that single salary number. So I wanted to, as we wrap up today, invite you to join our community for careers, for advice, for connections, and more. Our talent solutions team, Ag Careers, DeLacy Executive Recruitment, Food Grads. We have links to our websites there. You can find us online. We are all very active on social media, and we are sharing tips like these that we've shared in this webinar today on a weekly basis and sometimes on a daily basis. So I encourage you to follow us and subscribe to our newsletters. Thank you for attending today, our Let's Talk Money webinar. Hopefully this helps you feed your future as you move forward. Encourage you to apply for jobs, register for alerts and emails. Also, you can browse our educational content and connect with top employers through our services. So encourage you to do that. Again, a reminder, especially in Ag Careers, our services are free for job seekers. So please set up your free job seeker account, register for job alerts, and start connecting. So thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at agcareers@agcareers.com. Thank you.